Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Boy, do we have a good one today from the House of Commons, because during question period, Pierre and Justin went toe-to-toe as they always do, but this one was a little bit more spicy in the fact that Trudeau was a lot more animated, getting a little bit more aggressive with his tone towards Pierre, and this all happened right after Pierre had a caucus meeting with his Conservative Party where he made the announcement saying, "Today I'm announcing that I'm giving Trudeau one last chance to spike his hike, one last chance and only one more day. I'm announcing that if Trudeau does not declare today an end to his forthcoming tax increases on food, gas, and heat, that we will introduce a motion of a non-confidence in the Prime Minister." And that was what a lot of the question period was about today: carbon tax and getting an early election due to the non-confidence. And before we get into the whole little cheeky back and forth that Pierre and Justin had on the whole election situation, I wanted to start off by playing what happened at the beginning in regards to them talking about the parliamentary budget officer and, again, the carbon tax.
With the parliamentary budget officer testifying again that the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax. End quote. Now he wants to hike the tax on April Fool's Day. We won't stand for it. So what will it be with this Prime Minister? Will he spike the hike, or will he face a non-confidence vote at a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report lays out clearly that 8 out of 10 Canadian families across the country where the price on pollution applies get more money back every year. That's how we put more money in the pockets of Canadians while having one of the strongest plans to fight climate change around the world. That's what the Conservative Party is standing against right now. Money in the pockets of Canadian families and a real plan to fight climate change that is working, Mr. Speaker, that is bringing down emissions, that is making us more competitive, that is helping build the future.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I'm going to read again the testimony from the March 18th appearance of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Once you factor in the rebate but also the economic impacts, the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax. End quote.
Now, I figured instead of us just hearing them two go back and forth about what he actually said, I wanted to show you straight from the horse's mouth what the parliamentary budget officer did say during the committee hearing on Monday when he was brought in and questioned. Andrew Scheer asked him this directly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was hoping that we could have a discussion about the looming carbon tax hike that the Prime Minister is planning for April 1st. You did a comprehensive study of the carbon tax, and but you not only looked at the direct cost, you looked at the total cost. On page 3 of the report, it says household net cost of the federal fuel charge, fiscal and economic impacts. I'm sure there's lots of Canadians that are following this very closely because they know how high prices are and they're afraid of how high they're going to jump April 1st. But can you just explain what that means, fiscal and economic impacts?
So the fiscal impact is the impact of paying the tax directly, for example, filling up the gas tank, gas to heat the home. The indirect costs, so for example, if you buy a service or goods, there's an energy component embedded, plus the GST that's applied to that tax. So that's the fiscal cost. The government sends a check or a rebate. So the fiscal impact is the difference between what you pay, indirect and direct, minus the rebate. And on that front, 80%, we estimate 80% of households get more than what they pay. When we also include the economic impacts, that's taking into account the fact that some sectors will be negatively affected by the carbon tax. For example, the transportation sector, the oil and gas sector is an obvious example. They'll be presumably negatively affected by a carbon tax that progressively increases. So when we take also that into account, we find that households will have lower employment in some sectors, lower investment income, and we find that it's the opposite. Once you take into account the fiscal and economic impact, the changes in the economic fabric of the country, that households are seeing a negative impact from the carbon tax when including both the amounts that they pay, but also the economic impact on households.
And voila, there you go. We've been through this before. I've shown his chart. I've gone through his thing, and I've said this before as well. Yes, 8 out of 10 do get more money back if you're only looking at the fiscal aspect, which is what the Liberals keep harping on. But as he stated, if you take the fiscal plus the economic, the actual inverse of the 8 out of 10 happen. 8 out of 10 people are worse off. And this is what the Liberals keep trying to tiptoe around and not actually admit. Now, we're going to see them go on a little bit more on this back and forth until we get into the next section of clips.
The Prime Minister plans to make this problem worse with a carbon tax hike on heat, on homes, on fuel, on food. We will not stand for it. So once again, which will it be? Will he spike the hike, or will we have a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What will it be, Mr. Speaker? It will be that Canadians get more money with the Canada Carbon Rebate. 80% of Canadian households in areas where the federal carbon tax applies get more money every year from the Canada Carbon Rebate than they pay in the price on pollution. On top of that, we are fighting climate change, making our industries more competitive, and preparing a better future. There is no plan on the Conservative side of the House to either help Canadians with rebate checks or fight climate change.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Not only did the parliamentary budget officer testify that the majority of households will pay more in carbon taxes than they will get back in rebates, there is a table showing that every single province in which this tax applies, the middle-class families pay vastly more than they get back, and Canadians know it, because under this Prime Minister, they've seen their food, their fuel, their homes, their heating go through the roof. But why don't we just end the debate and let Canadians decide and have a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the parliamentary budget officer clearly spelled out that 8 out of 10 Canadian families in areas where the price on pollution applies get more money back every year than they pay in the price on pollution. That's because we created a plan that not only is one of the strongest plans to fight climate change in the world, but it puts more money back in the pockets of middle-class Canadians as we build a stronger future, better careers, more competitiveness, and a safer environment for generations to come. That's the plan we have. That's not what they're doing.
Now, what I found particularly funny towards the end of this clip is you're going to see Mark Holland there. I'll put it back up, counting on his fingers 1, 2, 3, and then holding a 0 with his other fist. And he's actually taunting the other side in regards to holding an election because they have won the last 3 elections. Now, this little cheeky stunt, Trudeau actually pushes forward in his next set of remarks, and Pierre challenges him on that.
Here are the facts from the parliamentary budget officer. They're directly from him. The cost to the average Newfoundland family is $1,874. The rebate is $1,497 for a net cost of $377. A net loss of $377 and growing. These are the facts. The Prime Minister stopped denying the facts, and if he really wants to contest and argue that he should be able to raise the tax, why doesn't he have the courage to call an election and let Canadians decide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we are busy delivering for Canadians a price on pollution that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families across the country. And an election on the price on pollution, we had 3, Mr. Speaker, and we won them all.
opposition.
One more.
Wow. Then he shouldn't be afraid to have one more. Housing costs. He sent 2 million people lining up at food banks, 8,000 joining a Facebook group learning how they can eat a meal out of a dumpster, and now his best solution is to hike the tax on their heat, on their homes, on their fuel, on their food. If he really believes in it, why doesn't he call a carbon tax election now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we've heard time and time again over these past many months the Leader of the Opposition talk about how Canada is broken. Well, Mr. Speaker, we are focused on supporting Canadians with things like childcare and dental care and a plan to fight climate change that puts more money in the pockets out of 8 of 10 Canadian families right across the country. That is the approach that is delivering for Canadians, and we've still got more work to do, and we're going to continue keep doing it to deliver for Canadians every single day we're in this House.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Finance Minister claimed that the carbon tax was revenue neutral, that it gave back, that the government didn't keep a single penny. Well, it turns out they keep hundreds of billions of pennies. They've collected so far $20.7 billion and only paid back $18.6 billion. In other words, they profited by over $2 billion by pillaging the pockets of Canadians. When will the Canadian people get their $2 billion back? And if he's so sure about taking it away, why doesn't he call an election to defend it?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is now complaining about $2 billion that he would never give to Canadian businesses, would never give to Canadians, because he would scrap the Canada carbon rebate. We are actually delivering money across the country to communities, to individuals, to small businesses, to Indigenous communities, to fight climate change and help afford their groceries. He wants to eliminate the carbon rebate. He wants to eliminate the plan to fight climate change. He has no plan for the future of the economy.
Now, I hope you all enjoyed that little back and forth as much as I did. You don't really get to see these animation or vigor, as you might say, in the question period that often. But I really don't understand why he's harping so much on the 8 out of 10 Canadians and how the Conservatives wouldn't be giving a rebate to people because they would access tax. Well, Canadians wouldn't be concerned about getting a rebate if there was no tax to begin with, so the logic doesn't make sense there. But this next clip gets into where Pierre starts calling him a phony, and he gets in trouble for this by the chair or by the Speaker of the House, because Trudeau keeps bringing up Ukraine and talking about how the Conservatives voted down the Ukrainian support, which I agree with. We shouldn't continue spending money to foreign aid. We should be focusing on helping the Canadians that we have here. But again, this is the little back and forth with that.
Mr. Speaker, after that Conservative leader turned his back on Ukrainians and forced his own caucus to do the same, he whipped his senators last night to vote against the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement that Ukraine asked for. Our Liberal caucus, including the member for Skyview, never backed down. Despite the Conservative Party's efforts to derail Ukraine's hopes to rebuilding after they win the war, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement received royal assent last night. While Conservative politicians sell out to the Kremlin, we will stand with Ukraine.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The $60 million Arrive scam is just the tip of the iceberg. We now learn that there are $5 million in additional fraud that has been identified by the Department of Public Procurement. And this is out of the $21 billion the Prime Minister is now spending on outside consultants, a 100% increase, and fully with the support of the NDP. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much of this $21 billion is fraud?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The situation is obviously unacceptable, which is why authorities are looking into this procurement process. Anyone who took advantage of our COVID response to save Canadian lives should face consequence. All federal contracts with these companies have been suspended as the investigation continues. But everyone in this House noticed how quickly he pivoted from a question on Ukraine. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, his members are ashamed of him for forcing him to vote against Ukrainian Canadians.
Members to please order. I'd like to remind the Prime Minister, please, to make sure that questions and comments are directed through the chair. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister demonstrates once again he is a fake and he is a phony, because he's a fake and
is a very experienced member of Parliament, and I know that he would understand that that kind of a statement that directed to an individual would not be considered parliamentary. So I'll ask the honourable member to continue with this question.
The Prime Minister is a fake and a phony on this issue, just like on everything else. He sends...
The honourable member, again, is a very experienced member, and he knows that when the Speaker asks him to chastise us a little bit for the use of language which is not considered parliamentary, I'd ask him please to rephrase, to withdraw those comments, rephrase the question without using those words.
Mr. Speaker, this is a Prime Minister who authorized the export of gas turbines to pump gas from Putin's economy into Europe to fund the war. He's someone who signed on to allow Russian detonators to blow up Ukrainians on the battlefield, and he's a pro-Russia energy policy to fund the Russian economy. We'll take no less.
Now, that was absolutely priceless, hearing Pierre double down on the same statement after being chastised by the Speaker of the House. And at the end, there was pure gold when he threw the same line that the Liberals love to throw at them, saying, "We will take no lessons from Conservatives." He decided to throw it back, saying, "We will take no lessons from the Liberals." Gotta love it. But love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this whole fiasco here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification to know when I've uploaded. And as always, I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.